Just a little bit about myself. I was born in Sheffield. I'm a Yorkshire lass, even though it's South Yorkshire. Um, always loved the outdoors. I had a really inspirational teacher at school who got me into orienteering and walking in the Peak District. So that was my stomping ground, really. We had a school farm up at Hayfield, if anyone knows it, and had some wonderful adventures out there. And mum and dad were also very keen on getting me outdoors. And then, it continued then into college. And then I qualified as a teacher. I went to college in Leeds, and then I sort of stayed around the Leeds, Bradford area, where I met Andy, who also was a keen hill walker. And we had lots of adventures together, and he sort of introduced me really to the Yorkshire Dales, of which I fell in love with. As I tell the slides, you'll see in a bit that I'm in a wheelchair now. I've not always been a wheelchair user, but when illness struck me down in sort of 2011, I had to look at alternative ways of getting outdoors. And I've made it my big campaign to make the outdoors accessible for a lot more people. And again, in my presentation, I'll be explaining the kind of things that I've done. I'm an ambassador for the Ramblers Association. I'm also a champion for Ordnance Survey, and recently was appointed by the Cabinet Office as the Disability and Access Ambassador for the Countryside. Hey, get me with these big titles. So why isn't it? My slides are not moving now, Victoria. Oh, they are now. People ask me why I love the outdoors so much. And the first word I always use is freedom, that being able to get out at the outside, whether on your own or with your family, but you forget all the stresses and strains of everyday life when you're out there in the beautiful countryside that we have around the Yorkshire Dales. Oops, I've just skipped one through, but never mind. It said about being energized, and you do feel a lot more energy. And certainly, during the winter time, when I'm not always out on the fells, just spending sort of 10 minutes outdoors really does improve my mood. I've got a little dog now called Tip, and anybody that has a dog knows that you have to go out rain or shine to give them exercise. And I'm just so grateful for Tip that she makes me go out and makes me have that quality time outdoors. There's so much research about walking by the coast. This is taken in Ireland. I was on the wild Atlantic coast, about aiding better sleep. And I'm sure it does, whether it's just the sound of the waves or the salty sea air. But I certainly sleep a lot better when I have some time at the coast. Getting outdoors, and they've been creating memories. This is a friend, Jonathan, overlooking from the top of Nateby, looking down over the fells towards the Lake District and the North Pennines. Again, this is one of my favourite stomping grounds in the Yorkshire Dales. Not that much discovered by a lot of tourists. They seem to just whiz past on the M62, either going to the, from the Dales, the honeypot place in the Yorkshire Dales, or up to the Lake District. But this is along Malastang. This little film that I'm going to show you is quite a few years old now, but it does give you an insight into what the outdoors means to me.
One of the things that I love about being outdoors is the fact that you've got that freedom to be able to go and explore places that you've never been to. The main thing I missed when I wasn't able to don my hiking boots for that hike was to actually be high. And that's the thrill I get, to climb the mountains. With the technology that's within this machine, I can now climb, and I can go higher, and I can go further. And it's just so exhilarating to be able to achieve that and be in my beloved countryside and in my beloved mountains and fells.
Battles that Debs has been through health-wise, for me to have watched has been inspirational to me. Yeah. One of the things that Wainwright said was, make your own route in life, and he did say about follow your own star, chase your own rainbows, and that's kind of what we started doing.
Just a magical feeling of having a summit to yourself where you can stand at a trig point and have a 360-degree view all around you, and there's no one else there. And when we come across people as we're out walking, we'll say to them, well, can you not have a canopy over you? And I say, well, yeah, if you put a canopy over, it's called a car. And I don't want to be in a car. I want to feel the elements.
So today, Andy and I shared the love of the outdoors. And when I was unable to walk, Andy stopped walking as well, because I was his walking partner, and he felt guilty about going out without me. But I remember the day exactly. It was the 1st of March 2011 that I wrote my very first blog called Access the Dales. And in that blog, I put something like, who am I? Who am I now? I'm no longer the head teacher that I was, because I had to give up for ill health retirement. I was no longer the mother that I had been, because my children now had grown up and flown the nest. I wasn't the hiker. I just didn't know who I was. And it resonated. I put it on social media, and it was one of those blogs that went a little bit viral. And so many people contacted me saying, they feel exactly the same, that they're trapped because of their disability, that they can't get outdoors. And really, that was what made me so determined that I was going to find paths that I could actually get along. We started researching about all-terrain wheelchairs, and that's the first time I heard about a vehicle called a tramper. And so Andy and I raised the money to buy that first one that's now up at Malham Tarn, and that is so well used and still going strong after all these years. I also put a tweet out asking about accessible walks. And this bloke called Jonathan Smith, who was just starting up with his own walking company, contacted me and said, well, I think I might be able to get you up to the Goredale Scar. And so we met him, and we didn't really know who we were meeting at all. And a friendship struck immediately. Andy and Jonathan hit it like a house on fire, and they talked about football as they were kicking stones out of the way for me to get up to Goredale Scar. And as you can see in the middle photo, which is a bit blurry because we didn't have a quality camera at that time, I just had my ordinary electric wheelchair that I was in at that time, with joystick controls. And although it was just such a short walk to Goredale, that sense of the freedom and that sense of being energized was just amazing, and really kick-started me off in writing about walks for everyone. So apart from that, I had this absolute madcap idea that I wanted to do the coast to coast. And Jonathan and myself and Andy were sat in the Craven Arms at Giggleswick when I announced, well, wonder if it is possible for me to do the coast to coast in a train hopper. Jonathan said I was crackers. Andy said he was going for a wee. And by the time he came back, I said, it's all done. We've got it planned. We're going. He said, bloody hell, I only went for a slash. So we set off April 2015 to walk the coast to coast. And we came across quite a few problems along the way. One was actually keeping warm. You know, because the only bit of me that was getting any exercise was my finger, which I did actually get a blister on after pressing the button for 190 miles. But of course, I'm not creating body heat. So and again, I really wasn't aware of insulated clothing and the things that are on the market these days to keep me warm. So I dressed up with so many layers that I looked like Michelin Man. But we came across things like this, lock gates, not just one lock gate, but I think that's overkill on padlocks. But we did come across gates in the Forestry Commission land that were locked. And when we inquired why this gate was actually locked, it was to stop scramble bike users going into the forest and using the tracks. Something that really I couldn't understand, because one gate was open. So if they were determined to get into the forest, surely they would drive round and come in through the gate that was open, which is, you know, what I actually had to do. I had to drive all the way around again, which put another 3-4 miles on my journey. Andy said, stuff that, he wasn't walking that far, and he sat with his flask of coffee and waited for me to get round and join him before we could get down into Ennerdale Bridge. But we also had gates that you actually need a PhD to work out the instructions on how to open the gates. Other obstacles, this is on the North York Moors, where we got beautiful paths, but they were blocked by these barriers that came down. A walker could go around the edge, as you can see, there's enough room there, but for an all-terrain wheelchair, it was very tricky indeed. I mean, I did get round, but it was a precarious journey, as they say. This doesn't look as bad as it was, but this, if anybody recognises it, was the old route along the Swaledale, which now has become the Swaledale Trail. And people ask, you know, what was the most difficult part of my journey? And I have to say, going through the Yorkshire Dales at that time, it was really, really hard, because before the Swaledale path that was put in, this route was very eroded. It had big tree branches along the way. And at one point further along the track, I really thought I was going to slip down the embankment and into the river because of the gradient of the path. And it's like anything else. I never have any pictures of that, because as soon as we were in a bit of difficulty, you know, the phones and cameras go away and all hands to the deck. But I must say now, I don't know if anybody have walked the Swale Trail, it's from Keld right through to Reeth. It's absolutely excellent and very, very well used. This is what's called a horse stile, and it's a plank of wood, like a sleeper, train sleeper, that goes across the entrance to a pathway, which the horses can step over, but you come to it in a wheelchair, such as you know, the Tramper or the TGA Breeze. Its journey's end. The train hopper can actually climb over it, and did climb over it. By hook or by crook, and I don't know how we did it, 190 miles later and 14 days, we arrived at Robin Hood's Bay. And it was absolutely amazing feeling to know that I had managed to do it as a disabled person in an all-terrain wheelchair. And that really was the launch of my new career in talking about accessibility. And when we talk about accessibility, obviously my passion is about wheelchair use, because it affects me personally. But the more I'm doing my work, it's very apparent of how many other disabilities hinder people's access to the countryside. And more I'm doing work about autism, about visually impaired, hearing impaired, how we can, you know, enhance the experience of people coming into the Dales. While I've got this picture on, I always talk about wheelchairs as being my shoes. So this wheelchair here, my manual wheelchair, is like my comfy pair of work shoes or my bedroom slippers. I never really know that I've got them on. It's just part of my body. And I propel it with my hands. I've got quite good upper body strength. Got muscles like Popeye, so don't ever offer to arm wrestle me because I'll win. And it, you know, it's great. I get all over the place in that. You should see the state of it. It's absolutely covered in mud at the moment. That little machine that's on the front there is a power wheel, and it attaches to the front of my manual wheelchair and really turns it into a 3-wheel electric bike. Brilliant for zapping along sort of country lanes, bridle paths, depending on the surface, of course, along canals. I've gone along the Skipton Canal in this with this setup. And you know, it's quite easy for me to transport in my car because it splits into two. This picture, by the way, is just taken at Chatsworth House. If anybody tells you you cannot do anything regarding accessibility because it's a listed building, go and have a look what they've done at Chatsworth. It's just absolutely amazing, the stuff that they have done to make the experience accessible for everyone, including a lift to every floor. And then going back to the analogy of my wheelchairs and my shoes, this is my 4 Seasons hiking boots. This is the daddy of all wheelchairs, the terrain hopper, and it's got the technology to be able to climb quite steep gradients, quite high. It can go over really rough ground. Excuse me, I'm just going to cough. Can go over really rough ground. And this is the one that I have the most adventures in. And this is the one that, you know, in the little film, it said about going up Skiddaw and Blencathra. I've climbed up Helvellyn. And of course, I did the coast to coast in it. And I've done quite a lot of the Dales 30 and working my way through those, seeing which are actually accessible and style free. Those machines are very expensive. The train hopper comes in at about £18,000 upwards. And generally, an all-terrain vehicle is a second wheelchair for wheelchair users. And so they're generally, you know, quite often out of pocket of most people. But thankfully, there's some fantastic schemes around the UK where all-terrain wheelchairs can be borrowed, like this one. This is at Dilston Country Park down in on the Southwest Coastal Path. And Countryside Mobility have over 50 locations going right from Minehead, right round Cornwall, back round to Dorset, where people can borrow them for just a small fee, which is fantastic. And, you know, I've certainly taken advantage of those wheelchairs there. Most National Trust properties now have an all-terrain wheelchair, which is, this one is the Tramper. And generally they stay with the Tramper, which I'll explain a little bit why I've mentioned that when a bit further on in my presentation. There's a company called Outdoor Mobility that started off in the Lake District, and now they've got some on the North York Moors. This one's at Winlatter, and just wonderful to be able to get out there. And you know, as you can see in the photograph, I was just sort of inside an inverted cloud. It was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. That's me again at thing. And this is the one that Andy and I raised the money for, that's at Nalham Tarn. I say it's a few years old now, but it's still going strong. So we set up in 2022, as last year, we launched the charity Access the Dales, and I turned the blog actually into an official charity with our aim of making the inaccessible accessible and putting all-terrain wheelchairs in different places, different locations, different types of wheelchairs. The purpose being that not everybody can actually operate a tramper. You have to be able to hold it with your hands and do the controls like a motorbike. And some people just haven't got that dexterity. So we decided that we were going to create this model where we had all types of different types of wheelchairs, so that if one wasn't suitable for you, then you could go to a different location and try the other wheelchair. I'd like to show you this film, which explains a little bit about our charity and a little bit about my background.
I just love the Dales. I've been exploring them since I was a child. The word I always talk about is freedom, because it's that chance to be alone if you choose to be. It's a place where you can share with your family and your friends. That's why it's so special. When I met Andy, my husband, he also had a love of the outdoors. Life was good. Life was really good. So 2011, I started with a wee bit of backache, as they would say. The MRI scan showed that my spine was crumbling, and I finished up in a wheelchair, but started researching how I could get out and about. Never even heard of the term all-terrain wheelchair. So Andy and I raised the money to buy the first one. But 2 years ago, Andy was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer. And within 8 weeks of diagnosis, he passed away. In 2022, we set up the charity, and it is about creating a countryside for everyone, not just the person with the disabilities. It's their family and their friends. I mean, this afternoon I've been for a lovely walk with a family, with children, and the children haven't taken any notice that I'm in a wheelchair.
I used to be able to walk to fells. 25 years ago, I had a heart attack. I've been more limited and more limited in what I can do. I was introduced to the terrain hopper. I've done some marvellous rounds, been out on the fells for 6 hours instead of driving around them. It has made a tremendous difference.
2 or 3 years ago, I was out gathering my sheep, and I came across Debbie on this terrain hopper, and it was amazing. It could go everywhere my quad could go, and she had freedom to access all the common fells and dales, and you could see it was very liberating. The hub has been going here, and it's been a variety of people. There have been old age people, there have been young kids, people been waiting for NHS operations. Ex-climbers have had accidents, a really broad spectrum of people who have an issue of just with mobility of one sort or another. They've come out into the beautiful national parks, and they've been able to see what every able-bodied person has been able to see. You know, it gives you that kind of freedom.
I can't walk without pain or without having to use crutches or scooters, wheelchairs, that sort of thing. I love to be able to see different views every day. So I like the fact of being outside and being able to relax, really.
But yeah, so the gentleman there that's called John, but he isn't actually, he's called David, who said about his heart attack. Just before Christmas, he passed away, which is really sad. But, you know, this film is a legacy to him. And I got a phone call from his daughter yesterday to say that his wish was to donate his terrain hopper to the charity. So you know, we're so grateful of that. And we're so grateful that we were able to put the last few months of David's life, that we got him out onto the fells, and that he was enjoying seeing those views that he never thought he'd see again. So the reasoning behind that we did the charity was that we'd set up a Just Giving page for Andy when he passed away, because people were wanting to donate money, and he was wanting to raise money to buy a new chair specifically for children. And we got £16,000. So we bought the first train hopper mini. Then the train hopper company very kindly donated another train hopper for us. And without going into all the background, we finished up with all these different wheelchairs that had been donated to us or bought for us by different grants. And so we decided that the best way forward now was to actually officially make us a charity. Again, this is the TGA Breeze that's at the Lister Arms at Malham, and that is getting so much use. And that is a dear friend of mine, Wyn. And again, she passed away 12 months ago. But the fact that she was able to get out there and see Goredale Scar means a lot. Gosh, everybody on this slideshow has died, hasn't it? Sorry about that, bit of doom and gloom there, but you know, we've got walks there to Malham Cove. This probably is one of my all-time favorite photographs. This dad cried tears of joy in the fact that he never ever thought that he would be able to take his son for a walk on the fells. And as you can see, Dad is operating the controls at the side because it's got joystick controls there. Because, you know, the boy hadn't got the ability to steer it himself and power the machine itself. So Dad was able to control the machine. We do all sorts of activities throughout the year and organise different kinds of rambles. We actually had our first walking festival back in 2021, and we had over 200 people come and join us over the 5 days for different events that we led. Some bringing their own wheelchairs, some borrowing the chairs from the charity. This is a group of visually impaired that we took out onto the nature reserve at Ingleborough. And one of the ladies is total no vision whatsoever, but it was like listening to poetry as she described what she could feel and what she could smell and what she could hear. You know, it was a very, very worthwhile outing that was with this group. We've had a group of people over from Cuba looking at the provision that we do in the Yorkshire Dales, and they were most impressed with what we've set up. This here is actually taken from the hub at Richmond. Richmond Swimming Pool have agreed to be a hub host for us, and so they've got the wheelchair there, and people can go right along the disused railway line to Eastby Abbey and back again for a cup of tea at the station. It's pictures like this when you know you've got your mother and daughter photos. Again, the little girl would never ever have been able to get out into the dales without the wheelchair. And this is what's called a paratrekker, and this is a manual all-terrain wheelchair that we've got. So our journey so far as a charity, we say we've had over 200 people joining us for the walking festivals. We've had 100% positive feedback from people. We've created a website that's got loads of information about all things that are accessible in the Yorkshire Dales, and it's becoming the go-to place for people who are visiting or even live in the Dales, of places to go and places to see where they can go for a cup of tea or a pint of beer that's accessible. And we've got evidence now of people coming into the Dales saying that they're booking weeks' holidays because they know that they've got something accessible to do every day of the week. So it's a very long and winding journey, and a lovely photo that I really like, this photo that Andy took of us going down. There's so much to do with the charity. somebody told me the other day that we were something of our success, a victim of our own success, because we didn't expect to grow as quickly as we have grown. And so at the moment, you know, it's myself and Jonathan that have been on the ground trying to keep everything going, and it's like juggling, trying to make sure that we've got everything in place and getting the hubs out and getting the booking system sorted and the advertising and promotion and organising the different visits that we have, that we arrange for people to come into the park. We've actually got a lovely lady that's just volunteered with us, and she's sort of looking after our events for us, which I'm so grateful of. And we got news last week that we have been nominated and shortlisted for Campaign of the Year by the Great Outdoor magazine, which we're absolutely thrilled with. Chances of winning are pretty slim because we're up against Chris Packham and the Ramblers, but the fact that we have been shortlisted, and I've no idea who nominated us, but you know, I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful that we've been shortlisted, and it gives us that message that we're doing it right. Whatever we're doing it right. So there is the link if anybody wants to vote for us, because I'm hoping you're all on technology now, so you might be able to give us a quick vote and boost our numbers up. So can you help? As I said, we are short of people working on the ground. We have so much to do if we are going to continue to expand and provide a really good service for people. Sort of things that we need help with is somebody to look at the website and keep the website up to date. We've got Anne now that's helping us out with community liaison and sorting out fence. Befriending people. We'd love to have a set of befrienders sort of linked to each hub, really, so that, you know, if somebody does book to use the wheelchairs and they're on their own, which we don't want people going out on their own with a piece of technology that could break down, for obviously for health and safety reasons. But I've been in a situation where I've been on my own, where I've wanted to go for a walk. But if I knew that there was a befriender scheme linked to each of the hubs where we could ring up and say, are you free to go for a walk with so-and-so, that would be brilliant. We need to get the word out that we're there, and Access the Dales is here to stay, and make the Yorkshire Dales as accessible for as many people as possible. We're very excited that we're also going into the Forest of Bowland, which is sort of a spitting distance really from the Yorkshire Dales National Park, and I can never understand why it was never part of the national park, but we've got 2 hubs already up and running and another one coming on board at Gisborne Forest. So we're always looking for hub coordinators as well, because we keep getting wheelchairs, and we need to find really good locations to put the wheelchairs. So, you know, if anybody's got any free time or the inclination to help us out, please contact me, because I'd be eternally grateful. At the moment, I'm writing 2 books. The first one is with Bloomsbury Press, and this is about people who've used the countryside to overcome adversity. So 3 pictures that of people I've been to see. First of all, the guy bending over with the woolly hat on there, that's Aaron, and he set up a walking group for gay men who, I can't believe that in this day and age there is still the concept of being bullied out on the fells, that, you know, he doesn't fit that macho image. He talks about himself being camp, and he's wanted to create sort of a safe environment for other men who want to go out walking. The middle photo there is Mike, and he's one of the dads of the 3 dads walking, who's daughter committed suicide, a teenage suicide, which was just so tragic. And he's befriended 2 other men who are in the same position, and they are walking around the UK promoting about teenage suicides. So it was a very sad tale to hear, but also very uplifting and moving, the companionship that's come out of it with the 3 dads, and the how they value the outdoors. And the other picture there with the gentleman in the wheelchair, he's got motor neuron disease and can literally move his first finger, and that's it. But they are determined that they are going to enjoy every day of their life out in where they live in the Lake District. I've got, the other book I'm writing is about walks in North Yorkshire, not North York Moors, but in North Yorkshire, because I've already got a book out that I've co-written with Jonathan, which is Walks Without Styles, in the Yorkshire Dales and the Cumbrian Dales, sort of around Kirby Stephen and round by Sedbergh. So there are, and people who are buying that book are not just wheelchair users, but people who don't like styles, people with buggies, with young children, with dogs that don't like styles. So it's not just about wheelchair access, it's about opening it up for everyone. I'm really interested what Victoria was saying about one of the projects that the Friends of the Yorkshire Dales are doing about transport, because that is also an issue of getting people into the Dales. You cannot bring a mobility scooter on a bus. And so if people are arriving in the Dales, they need to be able to know exactly where they could go for a walk and how they can actually access the places. And I think that's why our Richmond hub is so popular. It's because people can get the bus from Darlington into Richmond, and it's just a stone's throw then down to the swimming pool where they can access the walk. So, you've got my support, Victoria, for improving the transport system within the Yorkshire Dales.